Hello, welcome to the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Cranston. This week, I'll be speaking with Amanda Novak, who is a resource specialist at the department. It's a repeat appearance for Amanda. She spoke to us a couple years ago for a special Earth Day edition of the podcast about various things that she's done with plantings, including sunflowers and other fauna to help the ecosystem and also beautify the roadways. This time we're following up on a conversation last week with Tim Johnson, who's a landscape connection specialist with the Yellowstone to Yukon initiative. He talked to us from Alberta, Canada about success they've had with wildlife crossings, tunnels, overpasses, and things to protect elk and mule deer and grizzlies and other species. Amanda's going to talk about a grant that she has applied for on behalf of MDOT to try to do some creative things, or at least look into creative things that could be done for various species that are often the victims of run-ins with vehicles on our roadways, and also talk about why it's important to do this because it also protects the drivers. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I really appreciate you taking time to talk again.
Thank you for inviting me again.
So I talked last week, as you know, with Tim Johnson, who is a landscape connection specialist with Y2Y, which is the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative. He had some fascinating things to say about creative efforts they've used and some successes they've had in kind of corralling various big species, elk, mule deer, grizzlies, to safe crossings on the highways there in the states that go from Wyoming all the way north, to the Yukon. He's based in Alberta. So we're not necessarily talking about the same animals, although we do have elk in Michigan, and obviously we have moose and we have black bear. Let's talk about the grant that you're seeking and how this kind of fits in with your overall mission and passion as a resource specialist.
All right. Well, MDOT and MDNR recently wrote a grant application together, and it's for the USDOT's Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program. So it's a planning grant. It is a non-construction grant, and it's titled Michigan Vehicle Collision Hotspot Analysis for Planning of Future Wildlife Crossings. And so the intention of the grant is just to look at Michigan roadways and where the highest probability of crash locations is. And it varies by species, but is broken up into two parts. So one part are the larger animals that pose a risk to motorist safety. And then the second part is really looking at more of a species conservation approach. And so we selected some species that struggle with crossing Michigan roadways.
So I think first and foremost, people think of white-tailed deer. That's the most common. I know people who have only recently had run-ins with white-tailed deer on the roadways. And as we're recording this as we start to get into fall, and that's when these are more prevalent, especially in the early mornings and later evenings. I think it's important to set expectations, and I know you're very, very sensitive to this, that there's not much that we're really going to do to make it safer for white-tailed deer to cross at the myriad places that they cross our roadways across this huge state. But, I mean, what would be your measure of success on that front?
I think we recognize we're not going to, like you said, solve this problem entirely. I think there's a whole host of issues, especially when we start looking at our M routes. It would be very difficult to even fence long sections of M routes due to right-of-way types and that kind of thing. But this is more of a reduction. The idea is to reduce these locations where we have the highest number of crashes. And hopefully, like our Western states have done, is our Western DOTs, is to funnel them to where we would prefer them to cross.
Right. That's the hope. And, I should mention here that my contacts at the DNR have data that shows, and I'm sure you're attuned to this too, that there's been a decline in people hunting, and that contributes to a greater white-tailed deer population.
It definitely does. So MDOT ranks fourth in the country right now for collisions with deer. I guess Michigan does in general.
Yeah, a lot of
We
those are on
average,
county roads.
yes. We average 55,000 deer hits per year, which is so significant. And those are just the collisions that are actually reported. As you know, many collisions don't get reported. So that's a significant cost to our motorists.
Yeah, absolutely. Both money and obviously it can cause physical harm to the driver and passengers too.
Yeah.
Well, I think that elk, moose, black bear, wild turkey, pine marten, eastern Massasauga, rattlesnake, Blanding's turtle. I wondered about, well, two things. I want to talk about the rattlesnakes in a minute, because even though they've been threatened for a long time, and MDOT has been very progressive in efforts to protect their habitat when building or rebuilding. But why is only the Blanding's turtle on here when we have so many different species of turtles?
We selected the Blanding's turtle because it's a typical road crosser. It really crosses frequently. But I did want to add, and that's a great question, a great point. As we progress, so we selected those as our initial species to study, but I think as this progresses, if we were to get the grant funding, we could expand those species, and we would likely include some additional turtles.
Okay. So do you have any idea, and maybe this is getting into, a wildlife biology realm that you're not as steeped in, but why did the Blandings cross more? Is it just they're just more migratory?
I'm actually not sure. From what I've seen, the turtles typically cross the road because they're crossing to their nesting habitat. And from speaking with our wildlife ecologist here at MDOT, he said that once they cross and they have the place that they typically nest, they will figure out a way to get there again the next year. So they're very driven to get returned to their nesting grounds.
I thought you were going to say to get to the other side.
That too.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Massasauga rattlesnake, because I'm familiar with this, but I'll bet you a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, the Massasauga rattlesnake, that was a species selected between both departments. So we both have an interest in protecting this species. As you mentioned, it's threatened. MDOT does a lot of work towards making sure we don't hurt the snakes in our construction projects. A lot of folks probably don't know, but we have snake walker training is what they call it. And the resource specialists are supposed to walk the silt fence prior to a project start and relocate any snakes that were accidentally trapped within the project limits. And then our staff is supposed to do that periodically throughout the project. We also use wildlife-friendly erosion control products and things where snakes can't entangle themselves. And so we're constantly planning for encountering them in our projects. In addition to that, though, we have done a study, which was recently completed by MSU, to study how they're utilizing the right-of-way and where they're at in the right-of-way.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
In Michigan, safety comes first on the roads. To combat distracted driving, Michigan passed the hands-free law.
The law makes holding or manually using a cell phone or other mobile electronic device while operating a vehicle a primary offense. This means an officer can stop and ticket you for violating the law.
This can include, but not limited to, sending or receiving a call, sending, receiving, or reading a text or email, accessing, reading, or posting to social media sites, or entering locations into the phone GPS.
With this law in place, drivers are encouraged to stay focused, keeping their hands on the wheel and their attention on the road. Drive smart, drive safe, drive hands-free.
Michigan's hands-free law, making the road safer for everyone.
What do you say when you're talking to, friends and family on a weekend about what you do, and you tell them this and they say, well, why do we care about that rattlesnake?
Well, it's part of the bigger picture, and that's what I hope folks see. This is an ecosystem view, a big picture view. And so you're talking about species that all interact with other species, and they need each other. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we're getting people where they want to go. We're building our projects, but we're doing it in an environmentally sensitive way and accounting for other living things that fit into our ecosystem as well.
Yeah, well said. I think you explained that well. So in the suite of wildlife species identified through the project that I just listed them all, Sagwa is the only one that's listed by the state and the federal government as threatened. Several of the others are stable. Moose are special concern. Sword lions, turtles. Talk about the pine marten a little bit. What puts that on the list?
That is a DNR selected species. So they were reintroduced to the Lower Peninsula, and as a result, they struggle a lot with habitat fragmentation, which further leads to genetic isolation. So it's really critical that we keep their habitats connected. They are an important part of our tribal partners' communities. They're harvested fur bearers, and they're a featured species for DNR. So that's why they're included. I actually had to ask that too, because from a transportation standpoint, that wasn't something we had typically focused on.
You have much familiarity with them and like size or anything? I mean, are they like the size of a bobcat or bigger, smaller?
I think they're smaller. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with them.
Well, maybe you'll learn more as this goes on.
I will, yes.
Well, talk about how this work. I mean, obviously, you're very inspired by your work. You care a lot about it, and you take a lot of satisfaction in doing what you do. You've done a lot with, plantings, flowers, sunflowers, other flowers. How does this all tie together?
I think there's similar concepts and ideas. We have threatened and endangered species. We have, pollinator declines. It's just improving their habitats, connecting their habitats. And then, I mean, from somebody who's hit several deer in my lifetime and also one big turkey, reducing wildlife vehicle collisions and the safety component and also just the cost of it is a driving force for me.
You say you hit several deer. Where did you grow up? Are these all? I mean, you're based now in the Bay region, so Saginaw, Bay City area.
Yes, Midland County.
Okay, so a lot of deer in Midland County.
Yes, not far from my house either.
How about that? Yeah. Well, talk just a little bit more, if you can, about what your fervent hope would be. You get the grant, and then what are the steps after that? And I shouldn't, maybe be too optimistic, but I tend to think, based on what USDOT has done to prioritize this as an issue across the country, and knowing that you and the team put together a good application, including the folks at DNR, it seems like it's got a reasonable chance. So talk about what happens if you get it.
Well, if we get it, this is really the critical first step for Michigan. We're really in the infancy stage of this. So without this data, we have no starting point. So once we do the hotspot analysis, there will be a lot of steps that are included in that, including a public outreach portion where we talk about these hotspot locations, potential mitigation options, and we really engage the public in that part of it. And then from there, I am hoping that we integrate this into kind of our long-range planning goals. We start making considerations early in our design phases, scoping, starting to include some of these locations to maybe mitigate for these things as our projects develop. And maybe standalone funding someday, engaging outside partners. That would be the long-term goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's exciting, and I'm sure you're excited about the prospect of taking this a step farther. Do you run into people who are skeptical sometimes about this, and the time and resources that are spent on this? Do you find yourself, having to defend it, or does that really not happen often?
I think what's interesting, if you talk to folks, they're usually pretty excited about this. We get approached often with folks who have research ideas or really want to see this push forward, but nobody really knows how to get the momentum to do it. There are some folks that are discouraged by the thought of, spending transportation dollars on an effort like this. But overall, I think the public feedback is pretty positive.
Well, something I talked about with Tim Johnson in Canada last week is how this factors into, the dangers to the driving public and the cost. And you touched on that with white-tailed deer, but it's not just white-tailed deer. Some of these other species, people might swerve to avoid them, or, there's a cost in cleanup and maintenance that goes to all the road agencies, whether it's MDOT or a county. So, is that part of the argument that you make to them, that, look, this isn't just about protecting the animals, it's about protecting us too?
Yes, I definitely like to touch on that. We have one location in particular we've been kind of monitoring and trying to fight the battle all year, which is US 127 at the Maple River flooding. We had over 150 turtles killed on 127 this year, and actually coming with that, motorists were pulling off the road, they were moving turtles, they were swerving into each other, they were setting up makeshift lane closures. So yes, there's definitely a public safety component that goes to putting up turtle fence.
Yeah, I actually saw somebody doing that on 115 northwest of Cadillac recently, and they were pulled pretty safely off the shoulder, but still they're trying to, save a turtle when cars are flying by at pretty high speeds. So
yes, it was incredible. And then DNR was out there all the time trying to either move the turtles or, move their remains. Some of them were quite large. So yes.
So these weren't just blandings; these were a variety of species.
They were a variety of species. They said that there were a lot of very, very large snapping turtles, which can be difficult to run over as well, based on the sizes.
Well, yeah, that and the mass of the shell, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Amanda, is there anything else you want to say about the grant and the program and the work you do and hope to do with the help of the federal government?
I think I just want to highlight how amazing it's been to partner with DNR on this. It has been crazy to look at what the two agencies can accomplish when they're together. So I think that's been really great. And I want to extend a thanks to them for co-authoring the grant application with us. We could not have done it without their support and all of the information they provided to us. And hopefully I'll get to talk to you again if we get the grant award.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's certainly justified giving some credit to the folks at the DNR who are also passionate about this and care a lot about these animals and about our ecosystem overall. So yeah. Well, thanks, Amanda. We will talk again when the grant comes through and you have some some updates to offer.
I like your optimism. Thank you, Jeff.
I'd like to thank you once more for tuning in to Talking Michigan Transportation. You can find show notes and more on Apple Podcasts or Buzzsprout. I also want to acknowledge the talented people who help make this a reality each week, starting with Randy Debler, who skillfully edits the audio, Jesse Ball, who proofs the content, Courtney Bates, who posts the podcast to various platforms, and Jackie Salinas, who transcribes the audio to make it accessible to all.